Hello, everyone. Hello, world, and hello, Sans. And thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited about giving this presentation, and thank you for hosting these OSINT summits. I just want to underscore that they have impact and they make a difference. So keep them coming. That's awesome. Thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Jan, and I've been working in law enforcement at the national level in Denmark for the past 7 years as an OSINT investigator. So I'm currently with the Special Crime Unit, which in Danish is called National Enhed for Særlig Kriminalitet, for those of you who are from Denmark. So that's kind of the Danish equivalent to the FBI. So I work cases, I build tools, and I teach. So basically, I have the coolest job in the world. Yeah. So I'm here not presenting as a part of my job, but just as a private person. So my views and my words and my thoughts, they are my own and not my employer's. So this talk, as the title says, is about dumping the raw data from TikTok. And uncovering the invisible gold mines. But actually, it's not really about TikTok, but more about the JavaScript framework called React, which was built by the developers at Facebook back in 2013, I believe. It was open source, so it's been around for more than a decade. And yeah, so what I'm going to show you today is a somewhat unknown technique that allows you to dump a ton of JSON data from React websites. And to my opinion, it's particularly useful when you're doing manual OSINT investigations. And the data we'll be dumping, and I'm going to show you step by step how to do it, is hidden away using JavaScript. And the vast majority of it will be invisible in the web page. So if you pop up the developer tools and look at the source code, this data will not be there. So I'll be using TikTok as an example, but since the methods actually pertain to React, it'll not only work on TikTok, but on all platforms that deploy React. So that's, of course, Facebook and Instagram, but also sites like Twitter and Discord and Airbnb and lots of other those platforms that I guess people who do OSINT use on a daily basis. So my presentation, and I'm speaking a little bit fast here because I have a lot of slides and a lot of grounds to cover, and not because I'm particularly nervous. My presentation is a somewhat technical talk, and I assume that everyone has a basic knowledge of what the browser's developer tools is and how it works. And if you've ever tinkered with JavaScript and HTML and web development, this talk will be smooth sailing. And if all those concepts are totally new to you, you will be totally fine to follow along anyways, but just know that if you want to get this up and running locally, there might be a concept or two that you need to go explore on your own afterwards, right? So yeah, the agenda for today is threefold. We have the what and the why, and we have the how. So the what is where I say a little bit more about what this whole dumping invisible stuff from the web pages that use React is. And the why is where I explain to you why I believe that this should be a really cool addition and a useful one to your OSINT toolkit. And the how, of course, is where I show you a bunch of screenshots and take you step by step through the entire process of first doing this manually, getting to know what this method is about and how it works. And lastly, if we have the time, I hope to show you a GitHub repository that I built and made for this project that has a write-up of this talk and goes a lot more into detail about some of the cooler stuff that you can do. And it also has some coding snippets that enables you to do this automatically, somewhat down the way. So we'll be looking into that in the end if the time is there. So first of all, the what. So I think any of you who's been around for a lot of years in the OSINT it remembers the good old days when the web was what they call 1.0, when the web pages were static and all the content what we need would be right there in DOM. So below, and if you're from Missouri, I'm sorry, I don't hope this constitutes hacking in Missouri anymore, but so we're going to be seeing a lot of this page source code here. So back in the good old days when this screenshot was made, a lot of the information that we needed would be present in the DOM. It still is to some extent, but this is from a totally non-police case related OSINT profile. This is a friends list from an old profile. And you can see down the bottom that we have the Facebook ID and a lot of other of the stuff down here. I just redacted it for privacy reasons, but down here you'd have a lot of that information that those of you who've been around for many years would know that Facebook contained in the source code back then. And also it's worth noting that the CSS classes we have here, UI profile block content, and up here we have the friend list item. They had nice names that you could pronounce, and that would be easy if you wanted to extract some data just to just hook onto some of these CSS classes. However, today, in many cases, that won't work anymore, as a lot of you probably know already. The IDs and other crucial stuff has disappeared from the DOM. And well, back in the old days, OSINT guys would just tell you if you wanted to copy a friends list from Facebook, well, just copy the damn thing from the web page and put it into Excel, and you can just clean it there. But that won't work anymore since the IDs are not present on the friends list anymore. So that sucks. So the IDs and a lot of other the crucial stuff has disappeared from the DOM. So if you copy paste it, it's gone. And also somewhat annoying if you want to extract data, these CSS classes that we see here, they are not very readable anymore. So they've been obfuscated or minified, depending on why you think Facebook does this. So a lot of people are saying in blog posts like a year ago or something that the golden age of OSINT is behind us. Well, it seems that the golden age then ended roughly around the same time that Facebook killed off their graph search feature. But respectfully, I totally disagree. So my opinion, there's probably more data to be had than ever. It's just hidden away in ways that the methods of Web 1.0 don't reveal. And it most certainly requires a lot more technical skills than it used to do. And if you don't care one bit about the tech side of this field, reaching your goals, to my opinion, will become increasingly difficult in the years to come. So this is just well, I think everyone should level up the game, because this is what I'm going to show you today is really not rocket science, and it enables you to get a lot of data that you can't get to if you don't know how to do it. So the way the modern web works today is that whenever users interact with web pages, scrolling, clicking, hovering, a ton of data like what we're seeing here. This is, by the way, raw JSON data. I dumped this using the methods I'm going to show you today from TikTok's SANS profile. So I hope the SANS is okay with me exposing their data. So a lot of data like this, when you perform some sort of action in the browser, is being loaded in the background on demand. And frameworks like React, which is what this talk is about, takes this raw input and then renders it into the browser based on some template that they call components. And only a small amount of this huge amount of raw data here is actually being rendered on the web page. But React actually keeps it. And if we can figure out where it stores it or reference it, we can actually dump all this raw data using JavaScript. So this is a condensation of what we're going to be going through for the next 20 minutes. If you get this, well, thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day. And thank you for participating in this talk. If this is visually gibberish for you, well, I hope that in the end of this talk, this will not be. So the gist of this slide is that in the center here, we have the DOM of the web page. And this is an HTML node, and it's rendered over here on the web page. But also this HTML node has properties, and one of them is a special React property that has some within some path here, actually holds all this data that I showed you just before. So the gist of this talk is actually finding the right spot within the HTML nodes, accessing the React properties, and finding out exactly where in those React properties this huge amount of raw data is being referenced or stored. Yeah. So yeah, that's actually the gist of the talk. So, and of course, I'm just going to show you a quick couple of examples of other web pages that also use React. This is the Elon profile on X or Twitter, or what they call it nowadays. And you can see here, we have the following button here on the left, and attached to this follow button is all the raw data in JSON format that actually defines this single profile. If any of you have ever been tinkering with the Twitter API before it got locked down or paywalled or whatever it is, this would actually be similar to the data that you'd be able to pull out using the API. And yeah, this is similarly, this is from Instagram. Attached to this box here is some properties that contain all this treasure trove of raw data on this single Instagram profile. Sometimes the trick here when doing this is actually finding the right spot in the web page where this data is being attached to. And sometimes it's super easy finding the right spot, and other times it takes a bit of tinkering. But some of you are probably at this point thinking, well, yeah, and these requests and responses that we see here, we can just grab those from the networks tab. Sure, you can do that. It's right here. Here we can see that one request that fetched this data and this was being rendered here. It's there. Or some of you might be pointing to some proxying tool like Burp Suite, which is totally awesome, or OWASP SAP that does somewhat the same. Or someone would perhaps say, well, we can just use Chrome extensions. There are many, many scraper extensions out there that does scraping. Yes, that's true. I don't believe they dumped the React properties. So if you're doing that on the Facebook friends list, you'll be missing the IDs, but okay. There's also the possibility that you use those HTTP archives, also known as HAR files, that I've been seeing a lot of blog posts on a year back or so. And so why don't we just use one of those good old known methods and grab the data from there? Well, in my opinion, there are several reasons why some of those methods are not always ideal solutions for people when doing those manual OSINT investigations. So if we start by taking a look at the networks tab solution, so the first issue you'll be having here is identifying the right HTTP request, of course. And as you can see here, there are really a lot of HTTP requests, so finding the right one might be time consuming, and it's also error prone. I mean, try imagining if you have to explain this to a non-tech colleague. Oh, you just need to go down to the developer tools and look at the networks tab and just find something with data, right? I think the bottom line would be that most people would probably not do this, and that sucks. So also, if you were doing this, well, you also be seeing that data is scattered across multiple requests, right? Because if you scroll an entire friends list or all the videos on TikTok or all the followers on Instagram, that will be scattered across like tens or hundreds of requests that you then have to identify and copy by hand one at a time. And when you're done doing that, you get to the point where you're saying, oh, how do I get this data put together again? So you need some kind of per platform custom parser and all sorts of software, all again, which for the typical OSINTer is out of scope. So that's perhaps not the best solution. And what the HAR files goes, those are insanely dangerous. They're basically just large JSON files with all the requests and responses inside. And if you do cyber, you'll know that they are notoriously dangerous. So if you share your own HAR file with anyone, you basically lose risking whatever avatars you use to generate that file, because within that file, everyone that has that will be you. So being law enforcement or being OSINT practitioner and uploading that for a website, I would definitely not recommend doing so, because, well, that's a lot of trust. Basically, you're handing over all your accounts to someone on the internet. Would you really do that? Not me. So, of course, there's also local parsers out there, but then again, they require custom software, and we are now again fumbling around outside the browser environment, which is also, well, we want it in the browser, right? And yeah, what extensions goes, well, these are really dangerous. I don't know how much any people talk about that. I'm not hearing a lot in the OSINT community of OPSEC and the risk tied to extensions, but do anyone at all vet these before installing these? I mean, if someone recommends them to you on Twitter or Discord in some OSINT channel, do you actually take a look at what it does before? And even if you install it and you vet it and you have someone in your team that's able to do that, well, what happens the next time these extensions update and they've been bought by some evil actor that pushes malware into your browser? Oh, I don't want to explain that to the judge. Oh, well, we did this OSINT investigation and it turned out we might have been hacked. Oh, that sucks. So some extensions are cool, but just be aware that there are huge security risks connected to these, because anyone that's in your extensions basically might have access to everything you're doing in the browser. That's also a lot of trust putting into other people on the internet, to my opinion. So, and that kind of brings us back to where we started, another way of doing the same thing, but in a more secure environment. So, yeah, so that brings us to the how. How do you actually do this? Up until now, it's just me talking about, oh, you can do these wonderful things. And now I'm going to show you how you do it. So first of all, just a few words on React. Quick, I promise. I'm not at all a React developer. I've built a couple of small projects to get a sense of how the data is being stored and passed around internally in React, but that's also that. So if any one of you that is listening to this is React developer and this is your turf and I'm totally off on some of the terminology, I'm so sorry. I'm just a guy looking at this from the outside, trying to make some sense of it and pull data out of it. So, but the gist of React is that it's made for building user interfaces. And And the core concept in React, which is important to understand, is something they call components, which are actually some form of, what you call them, building blocks or empty templates or skeletons that just sits around after being defined and waits for you to fill them up with data, and then they'll render on the web page. So if we look at this example, which is from the React web page, we can see they define a component here, and it renders like this on the web page. So this is actually just a blueprint, and this one waits for you to fill data in, and it has a prop here called video. And once you fill data in here as a prop, and you fill a URL in here, and you fill in the title here, and you fill in the description, this will render on the web page like this. So the title goes here, the description goes here, and the URL, of course, is what you'll be getting if you click this. So that's actually the gist of React. Of course, there's some CSS and some styling in the mix as well, but that's the gist of React. So it's building blocks that await to be filled with data. So from our perspective, with the data perspective, this would probably start with some user interaction on a web page that the web page then reacts upon, hence the name. So we click or we scroll or we hover or something, and then the server goes and fetches some data. The data, we can see the data here, right? This is just example data that I did. And React then takes this data and puts it into the component, as we see here. And after doing so, it will render like this on the web page. So the gist of this talk is actually figuring out, how do we complete this circle? How do we get from the component and back to the raw data that was passed into it in a somewhat original form? So that's what we're going to be doing here. So, okay, Reacts are all about user interfaces, and we have the components. So this is just the schematics that I borrowed from the internet and adapted to TikTok. The real schematics is referenced in a GitHub repository that I built that I'll be sharing for you. So if you want to see the original source, thank you very much for the inspiration. This was built upon that. So up here, we see what is being rendered based on a search component. And down here, we see what's being rendered based on a profile description component. These are just my labels for this, for you to understand better what's going on. And down here, we have, what do you call those? An array, a list of video components. And inside this list is one single video component, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. So I'm explaining this to you because it's important to know where you might be looking for the data that we want to pull out. So if we want to dump the user data from React, the most logical place to start looking for this, to my experience, after looking into a lot of React pages, would be starting to look into this component. So you need to find the place that defines this piece of information here. And that is typically where you'll be finding the information. If you want to dump the information on the videos, you start by checking out the video component here. And if you want to dump the data on all of them, you might get lucky that it's actually stored within the list of all the components. So you can dump it from one place and not 5 like we see here. So that's basically what we're going to be looking at. So usually when you do OSINT related stuff and you tinker with the developer tools, you'll start by looking in the Elements tab here. I guess everyone here knows that you can right click a page and go view source, show me this element that defined this piece of information on the screen. So React actually has, this is called the DOM, the document object model. And the bad news is that the React actually has its own DOM called a virtual DOM or a VDOM, which is an in-memory construct that React's used to be able to quickly calculate which part of a website needs to update and then only update that single part. That's actually pretty smart if you have a lot of things that can change. So however, the VDOM is not visible in the regular DOM. So if you want to see that, you need to install the developer tools first, specifically for React. And that, yeah, I know, I just warned you again, developer tools. That's kind of ironic, right? No, but this one has, I mean, if you have 4 million developers using a tool like this, I mean, if someone pushed malware into that, I'm guessing into the Facebook repository, I'm guessing that would be noticed pretty quickly. So I'm quite sure that this one is safe. So if you want to take a closer look at the components, start by installing this one. So that'll give you, when you open up your developer tools again and refresh in your browser, that will give you 2 new panes here. You have components, which is one of them, and the other one's called profiler. And the profiler has to do with performance of React in the web page. So that's really not of interest to us. The one we need is the one called components. So if you open a web page and go to the component tab, you can now see the structure in the way that React was built, of how this virtual DOM, the React virtual DOM, actually looks like. And the way that the virtual DOM and the React developer tools work is that when you hover stuff here, it turns blue up here. And that's kind of similar to the behavior that we are used to in the normal developer tools. You can also click this arrow here and then point it at some element in the page, and it'll turn up down here. And that's similar to the way the regular developer tools work, right? So we can see when I hover this fragment here, which is just a special kind of component, this one turns blue. And when I hover the next one, this one will turn blue. And I hover the next one again, that one will turn blue. So there's clearly some sort of pattern here. So my opinion, now we have located the main component in React's VDOM where each of these videos reside. So that's what we now know. So the thing is now, what we need to do is go back to the top, and the developer tools work the same way as the regular DOM. So you have small arrows here. You can expand these and just walk down the tree, so to speak, right? So what we are looking for is details, and lots of it. And what we are looking for is details up here under the props, and that's short for properties, if you're wondering. And in general, when you build web pages with React, and you have, say, a skeleton like this video component up here, and you push raw data into it, developers talk about this process as passing in props to the component, at least in the tutorials I followed. So whatever props is being passed into the component, we can see those here. So the job is now to scroll down this tree that we see here and find the right spot that has all those nice details that we want to dump. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next couple of slides. So I'm just moving down here in this tree, and we can see there's a lot of stuff here. This is not really important. There's not video data here. Moving down, again, nothing, again, nothing, again, nothing. But down here, boom. This is where we find the jackpot. We see that this one has some props here, and one of them is called video data. And this is actually all the raw JSON that I showed you from the beginning in the black screen, that I dumped from Sans's TikTok here. So this is it. So okay, we now know that each of these videos will have the same pattern, because all of these components, they behave the exact same way. That's kind of the point of making blueprints and building blocks. They need to behave the same way. So all of these building blocks here, or components rendered on the screen, will all have this property here, video data, and will all have this data, and that's the data we were interested in dumping, right? So the question is now, how do we get from the virtual DOM that we can see in React, and how do we get to the normal DOM that we can reach by JavaScript? So that's not always an easy question to answer. I've tried splitting the screen here. So on the left, you can see the components tree. That's the React VDOM. And on the right, you can see the regular DOM here. So it seems to me when I look at these, when I hover the first one, this turns blue. When I hover the second one, this turns blue. And the same it goes for these ones in regular DOM. When I hover this one turns blue. When I hover this one, the next one turns blue. So there's clearly a pattern and a connection here. So let's take a closer look under the hood of what React actually does with this HTML node. So if you click this one, you see that this one turns blue, but also you can see that up here under the properties, and you click this, you can see that we have two special properties here. And if you never clicked this one in your life, and I'm sure that very few that do not do web development has ever been in this part of the web browser, but if you click this one and have been here before, you'll be noticing that all this is boilerplate. This is just what every web page has out here. But these two, however, that start with React, the one's called React Fiber and the other one's called React Props, these are not boilerplate. These are specific to React. So they have a special meaning in React. And just like we can in the regular DOM, where we can click these arrows here, we can also click these properties. So this is truly fascinating to me. When I discovered this first time, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And well, like 10 minutes later, I got lost, because when you expand these, some of these actually go on forever, because some of these components reference each other. So they go infinitely out here. So you can just expand and expand and expand, and you never go anywhere in the world. So that's insanely, really, really fascinating to me. So let's start zooming in on this and see what we find here. So I've spent a lot of hours drilling down these props across a lot of different React sites to figure out, well, what's the general gist of this? What methods in general can you say that will work on all React sites? And the bad news is, if you can say that, is that, well, there are really not such a rule of thumb, because to my experience, it kind of depends on how the developers build it and how they used React and what methods from the React toolbox and even the versioning of React makes a difference in aspects to what gets rendered and what can be seen under the properties. But so we have both the fiber here and we have the props. And to my experience, you can actually find the data oftentimes on both the fiber and the props. But today we'll just be looking at the props for easiness. So the thing is, now we need to expand this just like we did on the components tree before. And if you do so, you have two new properties. One of them is called class names, and this one corresponds to what we're seeing here. So that's clear the connection, right? So we need to go into this children here. And as I said before, this might go on forever. So my recommendation when you go do this manually, if you go 6 or 7 layers down, turn back. You're looking the wrong place. So, but in this case, let's just expand these and see what's going on here. So we click the first one here, and it has props. Okay, let's go into props. So I expand props, and now I have children. Okay, we're getting somewhere deep nested in this. More props. Okay, what's inside props? Loading children. All right, more children. This is getting somewhat deep and confusing, right? Have I lost you? I hope not. So children, 3 of those. Okay, let's look inside the first one of that. Oh, more props. This is not really interesting. There's no video data here. That's what we're looking for. Going back, looking into the next one here. Oh, props again. Whoa, 10. Nah, not really, right? Let's go back. So I'm going back up, and I'm going back up again. And since this is a dead-end road, we'll just go all the way up and take a look at the other one, right? So we're just closing up, so it's not as confusing to look at. And after doing so a little bit, we end up where we started, right? So this one seems to be a dead end or really confusing way of doing stuff. So let's look into the second one here. Props, okay, cool. Wow, now this is looking promising, right? So we have here a prop called user data, and we have one called video data. And so let's look into user data. Boom, we have user data. So this is a huge amount of JSON data. Cool, let's grab that in a minute. And this is a huge amount of video data. So this is similar to the stuff I showed you in the beginning. And that is actually the data that we wanna grab. So we now know where the data is, but where exactly are we and how do we get this data out? I guess a lot of you might be asking. So the developer tools here has a way of showing you that. So you can just right click it and choose copy the property path here. And if you do that, you'll get this path here. And this might look a bit confusing to you. So I'll just explain in very short what this actually is by making it yellow. So you can see the combination here. So this is the first one here. And JavaScript works with something called dot notation. So if you have a property here and you want to go into the next property, you just put a dot after the first property and enter the name of the second one. So we enter a dot, and we have children here. And of course, everything is not perfect. So if you have something like arrays or lists in Python, you index those by numbers. So that's why it says 1 here. And then we're going into props down here. And lastly, we're going to video data down here. So this is the way this works. So the last thing we actually need to figure out is, how do we target this particular HTML node here? Because you can do that using JavaScript. So when you know how to target these, you can pull out this information. So the way this works in JavaScript is that we need to start by saying document. So the document is everything we have in here. That's called document. That's a global variable in JavaScript. So we have the document here. And what we want to do is we want to find with a method called query selector, which just it's kind of like in Python, if you know that, you use a beautiful soup. It's like beautiful soup, soup.find or soup.select1 would be the way of doing it in Python. So you use the query selector method and say, oh, I want the div tag, this one up here, and I want that has this partial class name inside of it. And if this is totally gibberish to you, this is super easy. Just find a short tutorial on how the query selector works. It's really, really not rocket science. It's super easy. So the gist here is we use the query selector method and finds this one node here and dumps it into a variable that's called, I just named it a video component because that's actually what it is, right? So when we're done doing that, we know already what the path to the properties over here is, and we know that the JavaScript uses dot notation. So we actually just need to attach that path that we saw before to the node that we found here. So we start by using this one, and we add to the next one. And when you type this into the JavaScript console, which is what this is, It's just a part of the normal developer tools. It'll actually try to say, well, what do you mean children? And it'll show you what you can choose from here. So it's really helping you. And then we're referencing the first element, this one over here, and then the props, this one. And lastly, we have the video data down here. And when we press enter, boom, we have all the data fetched using JavaScript into the JavaScript console. So, yeah, that's actually all it takes to get this. So we've now pulled out this data using React, and I know there's not a lot of time left, Stephen. So I'll be doing this quickly, just at the end of wrapping it up. So we now have pulled out this data using React, and we've gone from the virtual DOM to the DOM using JavaScript. So what you actually need now to enable to make your own tools out of this would be looking into how you build bookmarklets. Or if you don't want to clubber up your bookmarks bar with tens of bookmarklets, look into how stuff like TemperMonkey or GreaseMonkey works. That's a place where you can keep like 5 or 6 or 7 bookmarks for instance, TikTok. You could have one for user data and you could have one for video data, all without just clubbering up your browser. So yeah. And I did a write-up of this talk. It's on GitHub. You can find it here on Jan Halen DK. I love Van Halen, so I just took his name and put Jan in front of it. Yeah. So I did a write-up of this, and I also put some tools inside of this that enables you to do this really quickly. And the last thing I just want to show you before finishing off this is how you go about doing this a faster way. And that's one of the tools inside of this. So I'm just going to be scrolling a little bit in these slides. This is just from the GitHub repository. So the tool I built, or a couple of the snippets inside of this GitHub repository, allows you to search a web page using keywords. So that's really awesome. So if you're on SANS web page and you know that this particular video down here has some keywords in it, that could also be user ID or a username or stuff like that you're interested in, just pop it in this tool here, and it will dump to your JavaScript console all the data that you're interested in and tell you exactly where in the DOM that data actually is attached to as a React property. So it makes it super duper easy for you to do this. So the last slide I'll be showing you, these are just slides from the GitHub repository. The last slide I'll be showing you is I enter the 4 days down here from this video, and it does like this. And it pops out in the console all this data that you can dump here, and it also puts it in your clipboard. So if you don't want to do this manually or your own, you got the data. Congratulations, go on about your work. And you can also build tools upon this, but I'll just show you a small GIF video here at the end of the rope where I do this. So this is 1.5 times the speed that this took. I'm searching for a keyword. It dumps the data into my JavaScript console. I'm copying the path to the property that I need to dump into my notepad. Cool. And then I'm just right-clicking this to see if the pattern here matches, and it does. We have all the nodes here. And then I'm writing in the next, I'm going back to the console, and I'm querying, getting a list of all these components here using the query selector all method and the CSS selector I showed you just before. And I'm grabbing the CSS from here, copy paste it in here. And you see I now have a list of 10 HTML nodes. And I'm just checking the first one here with the properties path that I just got from the tool here. Entering this, I have the data. Awesome, this works for 1. Now I just need to map this into extracting the data from all of these 10. And that you can do in JavaScript using a map function. That's what's going on here. And for each of the elements in this list, just dump the data. And there you have it. Dump it into a variable, and boom, you have extracted all Sans's TikTok videos, raw data. And this took like a minute. So this is not rocket science. It's super fun. And I encourage you all to go explore. These techniques are super fun and really not explored that much into the OSINT sphere. And also, this is not only a React thing. If you go and look at the SANS webpage, it's built in Vue.js. Vue.js does something similar. I've never seen anyone write about how dumping data from Vue.js, but I'm sure it's possible. There's also a framework called Angular that does something the same. So everyone, go explore, teach yourself. This is awesome. Thank you.